Thank you so much, everyone. Quite interesting mix of ideas. So we are getting close to the end of the panel. And the next thing is me talking for 30 minutes. So if you wanna go get something, get some sugar drink or something that help you to not sleep while I'm talking, that would be great. I appreciate everyone for coming on board. Gary, do you wanna say something?
Yeah, thanks, Mohammed. I just wanted to jump in and thank everyone, and thank you, Mohammed. I was going to just have a bridge to your sort of concluding thoughts. What I asked Mohammed to do is to kind of he's done a lot of work on sort of AI and work and the gig economy and been thinking about this for some time. And I want to hear from him and want all you to hear from him, but also to kind of integrate a little bit of what we've heard today. So it's a giant task. So in advance, thank you, Mohammed. And if you can stay tuned, we'll wrap up by 2:30 as promised. And I want to make a couple of closing just logistical remarks. So Mohammed, take it away and kind of try to put a ribbon around this amazing day that's made my head explode in just a really great way and in the way I'd like it to explode.
So Tracy, do not have high hopes. Real-time synthesis is not going to happen. But I hope I have some integrative thoughts here that bring together some of the things we've heard today. We've seen really interesting common themes, common threads. The panel added really interesting new insights. The two panel focus on different things. And I think overall, we see this as an exciting confluence of different views, backgrounds, and findings. People on these panel came from different backgrounds. Particularly on the second panel, those were people who would study these systems and sometimes build those systems. The first panel was application of some of smart systems, smart algorithms in scientific work. Mostly they were scientists, academics. And I hope what you heard today will drive the conversation in the year ahead of us and beyond. Gary is going to talk about the next step, which will going to happen hopefully in the spring when we are dealing probably with Omega or some other variants. I don't know. I hope not. I tried to spend a few minutes to put it into a context to hopefully bring them together. So bear with me. Let me know if you have any question. And I think it's good to start with a continuum. I'm going to throw in another typology or dichotomy here, two extremes that somehow defines how we look at AI, the society, the business, the technologists, how they look at the power of AI for digital transformation, particularly in the work context. I want to circle back to the main theme of the this symposium, which is knowledge work. So at one extreme, we witness fascination with AI and its transformative power. A lot of people, researchers, economists are talking about surge in productivity and efficiency. Those terms came up in a couple of presentations. So I would call that the efficiency narrative, the economic rationality, whether the AI systems, the systems that we're building are enabling us to do things more efficiently. Lower cost, probably fewer people, and shortest time. The other extreme, so the first extreme is very fascinated with technological transformation. The other extreme on the other side is basically focused on the fears of wholesale replacement by AI. Whether people will be replaced by AI, predicting a grim future, probably robots taking a lot of our jobs in organization and society. I think if you look at these two extremes, of course, we want to situate ourselves in the middle. Both have important merits. Both touch upon important dynamics of AI implementation. But if you look at knowledge work, they are not realistic for two reasons. And those, I try to integrate some of the things that folks said today. So the first one is previous waves of automation. We have 40, 50 years of research in information system, in organization science about the implementation of technologies. Victoria, one of the panelists on the first panel, said, look at the history of technology. That's quite revealing. That's quite helpful. One book that everyone has to read because we are dealing with work and knowledge work context is the book of Sushiana Zuboff. She wrote it in 80s. I think she collected data when I wasn't born. And she's talking about technology, information technology. I think that's one of the early definitions of information technology and its automation effects, how it can automate a lot of works. She did this very extensive field study, ethnographic study. And if you read the book, that I think came out in 88 or 86, a lot of it is still relevant. You keep hearing the same fears, the same arguments, and the same fascination in her book. And some of the things she's talking about, the technology of the day was, of course, mainframes. It still resonates with us. So somehow the history is repeating itself. Some of these stakeholders that benefit from technological hypes, they are fueling it again. And what we learned from this wealth of research, 30, 40 years of research on IT and automation, computerization research in social informatics, role playing, and other people, is the context of knowledge work is complicated. And technology, even the smartest technology, cannot really automate really important parts of this work. So some of the examples, Shamsi talked about the multifaceted work settings that we are witnessing today, hybrid work environment. There are really important nuances to this type of work that technology may not understand or may not be able to replicate. Tracy talked about invisible work, the extra work that a lot of folks embark on to actually get to the core of their work. And this invisible work, by definition, is invisible to designers, to people who are looking from outside. And in a way, if you look at this research, the knowledge work context, a lot of it, it's of tacit nature. It's hard to automate. It's hard for a machine to understand a lot of these nuanced, somehow socially, contextually rich instances of knowledge work. Another thing that Andrew brought to the mix, very important, power dynamics in organization define a lot of technological outcomes. So some people are going to push back against technology. Technology will not, what we learned from that 30, 40 years of research is technology does not enact itself, does not unfold in vacuum. It fits a very complicated organizational dynamic that has power, societal, organizational struggles. Nancy, I think that was a very interesting example she used. She said paperless office was discussed first in 70s. We're still far away from that vision, even though the technologies that we are using today are far more advanced than technologies of 70s. So that's number one. Previous waves of automation, our understanding, our deep research, grounded research, empirical research makes it clear that knowledge work is complex. The second point that hopefully brings us to a more realistic understanding of the AI impact and AI transformative power is real capacities of AI system. That also came up in some of the discussion today. AI system provide unprecedented opportunity. There is no way to question that. The new wave of AI provides really important affordances in the way that we analyze, discover patterns in large data sets. I think Corbin talks about genomics data sets and how the AI system allow researchers to disambiguate data and provide some really other important utilities. But it's very important to understand. I think Shamsi put it very eloquently. We are not dealing with super intelligence phenomena. AI intelligence at the end of the day is very task-centered. It's very narrow. It's very focused on a specific task. And it's hard for AI system to transcend those tasks. And if they transcend, they would be only useful. Their learning, self-learning capacity would be only useful for adjacent task domains. So it's safe to say that one of human capabilities that is not going to be replicated by AI system is analogical thinking, which means you transfer learning from one task domain to another task domain that is not really similar to the task domain A. I've got young children, and I'm often amazed how they get some of the learning from one context and apply it to another context. That is a unique human capability. I don't think any AI system is going to possess analogical thinking in near future. More important than that, AI system is not able to concur contextual, holistic thinking that is kind of human domain of knowledge. And it's super important. Anyone working in a knowledge-intensive organization, you can tell task-centered intelligence, our technical background matters, but as you move up in the organizational hierarchy, those strategic thinking become much more important, and they require a very different system of thinking, something that is hard for machines to imitate. So we got to take a middle ground. All that being said, is we need to envision something between these two extremes. I don't think there is any objection to that. It's just how to figure it out. That's the billion-dollar question, how we situate ourselves somewhere that provides balance. And I will explain balance, what I mean by balance, because there are two really important set of questions that came up in all of the conversations today. So there will be automation. In that middle ground, we will see automation. But again, because of the nature of the complex nature of knowledge work, the replacement narrative is not really realistic. Even if it's realistic, it's not very productive. It's not a way to understand how we can create a balance between humans and machine. So in my work and other researchers, we suggest this partnership narrative as, I mean, that's no-brainer. Rather than replacing humans, we need to find ways that humans in knowledge-intensive work environment can work with machines as partners. So in ideal situations, some mundane repetitive tasks can be automated by machines. Machines, as I said, are going to automate certain tasks, then free up humans plate, and they can direct their attention to more strategic and human-centered tasks, things that require humans, something that we call elevate human. It's a more normative vision of AI implementation. An example that came from one of the discussion, Shamsi said, a well-trained AI system can help us with formatting and organization in writing. A lot of things we do when we write as academics, and I'm sure other people, is just formatting. Some of these problems, when you copy paste something from one document to another system, it's hard. You spend frustrating amounts of time on these mundane type of work that are not necessarily generative or conducive to some form of learning. So those can be automated, those can be done by our artificial partner. But in the new the new dynamics of collaboration and partnership, we keep hearing about the term augmentation. That came up in a couple of conversations today. And again, I want to emphasize the partnership narrative instead of replacement narrative and efficiency narrative. Efficiency narrative is what matters to us is making things, organizational work processes more efficient. We know that after years of research on business process reengineering, things that we're really focused on that efficiency narrative over long term, that is not a very even productive perspective. Let alone the ethical consideration and ethical consequence of that perspective. So how can we unpack this partnership narrative? How we can come up with a best form of symbiosis between humans and technology and artificial machines? That's complicated. That's something that we got to figure out as a community. My last question was somehow directed at that folks started articulating their thoughts. But I think one simple idea here is in this symbiosis relationship, my shortcomings will be covered by the machine. Machine will take care of my shortcomings, and I will take care of the shortcomings of the machine. And in this relationship, we play complementary roles. We are not trying to replace each other, and we are trying to learn from each other in a very symbiotic partnership. People in teams and settings, we've talked about the concept of synergy for many years. They try to complement each other and teach each other things that they don't know, they don't possess. And there are really important impediments that we got to really consider. Some of it came up in our conversation. Some of the panelists talk about algorithmic bias. Nikhil talked about the bias that can come from the data. If my partner is biased, the partner can get me into a vicious cycle of biased decision-making. I feed my bias to the partner keep projecting on that biased data set or a biased thinking process. And that can be that's the opposite of synergetic symbiotic relationship. Another thing that came up in our conversation were forms of instances of automation bias. I think Corbin talked about this. Automation bias has existed for many years, have been studied for many years. We use other terminology like cognitive complacency, where humans, organizations, collectives put too much trust in the decision-making process that is automated. They basically trust too much their artificial partners and uncritically accept the results of their decision-making. You can think of many examples around us. Some of them came up. So moving forward to unpack that partnership narrative, to go a little bit further than that, I think that gets us to where we are as, for the most part, we are professors, we're academics, so we teach, we train people. So one really important question ahead of us is what set of competency we need to foster? What are the things that we got to teach our students? What are the tacit, explicit forms of knowledge that they need to attain before getting to the job market, and how that can be also nurtured continuously while they're working after school. So I think I would come up with two of these sets of competencies. So competency related to our competitive advantage in that partnership. As humans, we need to build on our competitive edges. These are the things that will not go away. They just become more important. The simplest one is emotional social intelligence. Decisions in organization, beyond organizations, are gonna influence a lot of people. Understanding how that impact happens, who's gonna be impacted, some ethical consideration is our competitive edge. Another really important thing that I've studied is intuitive decision-making style. In a lot of cases, our decision-making is not necessarily analytical. That doesn't mean that it's arbitrary or without basis. But we build on years of tacit knowledge, tacit understanding of our environment, internal environment of the organization, external environment of the organization, and decide that this is the best route to take. And it's very hard for a machine to replicate, to imitate that type of decision-making style, intuitive decision-making. For the most part, AI systems build on analytical decision-making style. Another really important point that came up in a couple of conversations today, I think Corbin also emphasized this, was critical thinking. That is one of the things that our students need to understand. But here, the remedy to automation bias is critical thinking, always considering other routes, considering alternative. One of the biggest problems when we consume social media content, and has been actually exacerbated by these individualization algorithms, is confirmation bias. Am I able to escape echo chamber in decision making? Am I able to overcome my confirmation bias when I'm collaborating with these machines? Social media systems are now very important forms of knowledge sharing platforms. So critical thinking is something that we gotta really work on as competencies of human, what they call competitive advantage of human. The next set of skills, the second set of skills that we gotta work on is collaboration competency. Now we have to work with these artificial agents. Chances are, because of their self-learning capacity in near future, they may be a member of our team. Different than previous systems that would just only support our interaction, would be the platform of collaboration. They might be providing their own inferences in interesting ways. So are we able to teach students ways to collaborate with these systems? Corbin talked about some of the basic competency, analytical competency that the students need to possess before being able to work with a smart system. So as educational institution, we gotta grapple with really important, I would say, socio-technical question. I want to emphasize the hyphen in that word. Many people do not see the hyphen, that's okay. But it's not just a technological problem. We are not dealing with a new technology, even though the technology matters. We are dealing with a new wave of AI systems that are qualitatively different. One of the major differences is the dominant opacity of these systems. as opposed to rule-based system that we were working with decades ago. So the technology matters, but at the same time, what matters is the interaction of that technology, how it embed itself into some organizational context. The power dynamics that Andrew mentioned. So in my own research, when I look at the algorithmic management, we figured that in most cases, as I noted, AI systems are not going to replace managers. That has happened in the gig economy. But in most instances of knowledge-intensive work, the type of work, the nature of work is more complicated. So it requires a more nuanced implementation of algorithm. But what we observed in relation to this socio-technical dynamic is algorithm fits into already existing structural work. So in some senses, in some organizations, they may give more power to managers, the party that support implementation of these systems, they give more power to managers. In some instances, they may give more power to workers. But what matters is these technologies are not implemented in a vacuum. They fit into already existing socio-technical dynamics of the organization, but they also transform those dynamics. What matters is, I think Andrew mentioned human-computer interaction, that the hyphen that is shaped based on the interaction of those two entities, or socio-technical dynamic, which is the hyphen, the interaction between the technology and the social context. So the context really matters. The technology matters too. So I'm getting close to the end. Hopefully, I said, when we look at the AI and its transformative power in knowledge work, we need to take a balanced perspective. I talked about the first notion of balance, which was the partnership. The second balance, I think, is dealing with two types of questions. It has to do with these two types of questions. And these questions came up in different formats, in different fashions in today's conversation. So question one is, I would call it the could question, which has to do with the technological feasibility. Is able to transform knowledge work the way that these consulting firm technologies are presenting them? Do we have enough understanding the nuance of knowledge work? Andrew talked about costly error, how effective AI systems are and how comfortable we are with the error. That is related to more of the could question, whether we can put our trust into the AI system and whether they will be effective partners or entities that can augment our work relationships, our work practices. Another really big problem here when we are dealing with the wave of AI that we are grappling with is the problem of explainability and opacity. In my own research, I partner with pathologists, important partners, important players in medical diagnosis. And there's a lot of buzz. And of course, you've seen a lot of it, particularly in relation to radiologists, not pathologists. Computer scientists that get funding, seed funding, small companies, startups are trying to automate important aspects of pathologist work. One thing that I've learned with a grounded perspective, if you talk to pathologists, if you really study their work setting, things are very complicated. That opacity problem is a huge issue. Even if the AI system can come up with 98% precision in predicting certain problems, certain cancers, that 2% is problematic because the system is not able to really explain how it came up with that 98% precision. Who's going to be accountable in a field like pathology with a lot of compliance framework and a lot of compliance constraints? Another really big question is there are really, really interesting, and as I noted, nuanced aspects of this work that cannot be replicated by the algorithm. The final reports that pathologists write for the doctor, that language is absolutely, it's a very interesting language because how they project their certainty of their diagnosis, that comes through a lot of tacit articulation in that letter. So, the systems that are writing things, codes, may not be able to replicate the social intelligence that goes into writing and interpreting those letters. The first question, as I noted, is about could. The next question, which is as equally important, is about should. So Victoria earlier, interestingly said, the fact that you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. There are robots, people are experimenting with robots to babysit, to take care of young children. In near future, they might be able to read. I highly doubt, but let's assume they can read gestures, and they can really. I mean, that robot would be $1 billion robot that I'm going to spend $1 billion if they can babysit our children. But then the question here is, should we do that? Should we allow robots to take care of our children? Here we are dealing with really important ethical consideration, ethical question. Shamsi talked about equitable design. Are we creating a work environment through the design of technology that is more equitable? Tracy, a lot of things she mentioned, the efficiency narrative that is behind the could question. Can we make more efficient system through the implementation of AI system? That efficiency narrative glosses over the position of minority in our economy, minority worker, the extra invisible work, what you call non-job work of Black women. That is a very important consideration in design of system. Daniel talked about information asymmetry. Through our research on algorithmic management, we found that these systems are by design, many of them are opaque, but it's very interesting because there is another component that compounds the opacity, and that's organizational willingness to use this system to generate more opaque work system. In a sense, managers in many organizational contexts, they think if the system is more opaque, it gives them more power over workers. So technology opacity is not the only problem. We've got the problem of organizational opacity that builds on technology opacity. Zainab and Andrew both talk about control and surveillance dimension. These are really important normative question, ethical question that we gotta study and understand. Even if we are dealing with the could question, we are allowed to do better system. We are allowed to do things more efficiently. The question is, are all the stakeholders benefiting from this new dynamics? Shareholders, managers are not the only stakeholders that need to shape these systems. So a stakeholder perspective is very important to adopt here. Zainab, I think, talk about social contract. We need to update our social contract to maintain a healthy society beyond profit for small group of parties, shareholders, and people who are in control of these big firms. So these are all interesting questions that will drive our conversation as we try to envision the role of AI in knowledge work. And I hope everyone continue to be engaged, share ideas in this space. We have a website that's designed. Gary talked about the hashtag. And if you want to, Gary, add more about the logistical issues. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Mohammad. I think you accomplished that very challenging task. You got sort of everybody's points engaged in your wrap up and grounded it in sociological and socio-technical theory. Issues of balance, issues of where technology fits in the social contract, could kinds of questions. These are all essential to what I think our students need to grapple with while they're here at SILS, so that they'll be prepared in the future to continue to be successful and competitive. So I wanted to do just a quick little thing here. I'm going to share my screen. Are you able to see this Word document? So there's just a couple of things I'd like to point out. First, thanks to everyone. This was just amazing and thought-provoking and a really great way to sort of kick off these ongoing discussions.
Barry, you can't see the Word document.
You
We
cannot?
can only see, no, we can only see your desktop.
Okay. How's that? All right, let me all right, I'm going to try that one more time. All right, I'm not gonna do this. Sorry, I've got too many too many monitors, I think. So the main thing is that if you want to continue this discussion, you can do it via Twitter with kind of short things. But there's a if you go to the website, which I'll stick into the chat right now. You'll see that, that there's a forum, and I better send it to everybody. And that forum will allow you to make comments, post whatever you want. I've tried to sort of post a seed discussion in based on the morning sessions, and so but post whatever you like. If you want to share resources, articles, videos, what have you, websites, just send them along to me, and I'll make sure that they get included in the website, and this can be a place where things continue to aggregate. The one thing I did want to sort of show you is another idea, and that is we're looking for kind of mini cases, and the mini cases, and we've created a few of them. We've created one for journal editing and management. We've created one for the use of Mechanical Turk in social research. And we've created one for legal research. The idea is to answer a few questions. What field are we talking about? What system or systems are typically used in that field? What are the kinds of knowledge workers that you're talking about? What kinds of technologies enable it or underlie it? How does the workflow change what used to be done in this work? What are the costs and benefits? And then what are the implications from an information professional's point of view? So we're going to put these up on the website. We thought about putting them up in advance, but didn't want to overly influence what took place in the symposium. So those will be there for people to look at. I really encourage our students who are tuned in to think about this and sort of contribute some simple cases. Just this morning, the New York Times had a piece on the Codex software that writes software, and a very interesting side story about someone who's looking at sort of archival practice with media and automating that, and the way that people and machines are going to have to work together to manage media assets. So lots of things going on in this space, and I think having some little case studies that people can contribute and we can then comment on will give us some more fodder for our curriculum efforts going forward as we create new courses, as we adapt our existing courses. And I hope stimulate people in the broader community to think about these issues and prepare our students to work in a continuously changing world. So I'm 2 minutes over. I apologize for that. I want to again thank everyone for your participation. I look forward to continued conversation, and we will hopefully be together in some way in probably April of 2022 for kind of a mini conference to try to synthesize and wrap up some of this. Thank you, and stay safe and stay productive.